let's just take a moment here and let yourself just settle in. I know some of you are doing that already. And just, you can do this in a very simple way of just seeing how it feels to be here at this moment. How is your body feeling? How are the emotions? What's the quality of mind? Just noticing, no judgments. And here we go. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dhamma.
I take refuge in the Dhamma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
For the second time, I take refuge in my good heart.
For the second time, I take refuge in my good heart.
For the second time, I take refuge in the natural unfolding of the mind-heart.
For the second time, I take refuge in the natural unfolding of the mind-heart.
For the second time, I take refuge in the community of fellow seekers, those who have walked this path before me, and the interdependence of beings.
For the second time, I take refuge in the community of fellow seekers, those who have walked this path before me, and the interdependence of beings.
For the third time, I take refuge in the Buddha.
For the third time, I take refuge in the Buddha.
For the third time, I take refuge in the Dhamma.
For the third time, I take refuge in the Dhamma.
For the third time, I take refuge in the Sangha.
For the third time, I take refuge in the Sangha.
I undertake the precept to refrain from harming intentionally.
I undertake the precept to refrain from harming intentionally.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking what is not freely given.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking what is not given freely.
I undertake the precept to refrain from sensory entanglement.
I undertake the precept to refrain from sensory entanglement.
I undertake the precept to refrain from deceit, gossip, harsh speech, and idle chatter.
I undertake the precept to refrain from deceit, gossip, harsh speech, and idle chatter.
I undertake the precept to refrain from intoxicants to the point of heedlessness.
I undertake the precept to refrain from intoxicant to the point of heedlessness.
I undertake the precept to refrain from speaking or acting with ill will.
I undertake the precept to refrain from speaking or acting with ill will.
I undertake the precept to be kind and generous to myself and all beings.
I undertake the precept to be kind and generous to myself and all beings.
I seek to observe the mind-heart without preference.
I seek to observe the mind-heart without preference.
I seek clarity and acceptance.
I seek clarity and acceptance.
When sending and receiving kindness feel the same, self dissolves in contentment, and ambition fades into timeless presence.
When sending and receiving kindness feel the same, self dissolves in the contentment, and ambition fades into timeless presence. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
And again, there's just this sense of allowing things to be as they are. Just settle gently without push, without strain, but just open up but just what's going on right in this moment. How the body feels, how the emotions feel, how's the mind. And then there's this sense of just gently sending uplifted qualities, kindness, compassion, generosity, any uplifted qualities to ourselves. There's no one in the entire world that's more deserving of our kindness than ourselves. So there's this gentle sense of allowing the sense of ease and well-being settle into us. And there's two ways people imagine doing this. They actually amount to the same thing underneath. One is the sense of sending kindness to yourself as if you were sitting next to you. And the other is to just imagine holding yourself right there in your heart. So you send well-being to yourself in your heart. It's the kind of feeling you get when you're patting a kitten or scratching the ears of a dog, or just holding a small child. Or that ease of well-being that comes from looking in on a small child sleeping. The sense of well-being just easily and naturally flows to them and surrounds them. But you just let that flow to and surround yourself, your beingness, your awareness, your presence. Just in this moment. And if the mind drifts a little bit, it's not a big deal. It's what the mind does. It's what the mind was designed to do by evolution. Drifts and looks around. It's not a problem. But we still want to just recognize where the attention has gone. Release it in the sense of just letting it be as it is. Relax any tension that may have come up. Anytime the mind drifts, there will be some tension. Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes not so much. So it's just this giving permission for any tightness or stiffness or thickness of mind to soften, relax. Recognize, release, relax. And then just allow a smile to come back, just very gently. The natural mind has a softly glowing quality, like when we smile gently. We recognize, release, relax, smile, re-smile again, re-smile, and then return to our object of meditation, which for the moment is just sending well-being to ourselves. Either sending to ourselves or surrounding ourselves in our heart. And if the mind drifts again, then we just repeat. Recognize, release, relax. We smile, return. And then repeat as needed. Nothing forced, just this allowing. And again, as the mind drifts, as it will, we just come back. Recognize, release, relax, re-smile, return, repeat. As we just surround ourselves in this subtle glow. And as some of you may be doing already, after we settle in, we just send the same kind of ease and well-being out to a spiritual friend, someone for whom it's very easy to wish them well. And if you've been doing this for a while longer and your practice has moved along, we just send it out to all beings everywhere. All beings in front of us, all beings behind us, to the right, to the left, above or below. Just allowing that sense of ease and tranquility and kindness to gently flow out in all directions at once, to all beings everywhere, those near and far. And so again, we just rest in this glow of kindness and compassion and generosity of spirit. And if the mind drifts off to one thing or another, starts thinking about various things, you kind of lose contact with the present. The mind is drifting like that. There's nothing you can do about it. You're just gone. But there will be this moment of spontaneous wisdom that will rise, usually with a recognition, oh, I was meditating. Come back to the present spontaneously. And as you do that, it can be helpful to go through the 6 R's again. Recognize, release, relax, re-smile, return, and repeat as needed. And at some point, I imagine many of you are there. Breaking them down into those 6 feels a little clunky, a little cumbersome. And so all those R's just start to roll together. As you recognize, that also brings up a release, and the release evokes this sense of relaxation. We smile spontaneously with that and return to our object. All in one gesture. And it's okay to let them all flow together. Again, if the mind is gently glowing, then we just continue on. But if the mind wanders off, it's in there. And we just come back to the present. The way Ajahn Chah described this, as he said, it's as if we're sitting in a house. There's no furniture in the house. There are 5 windows and a door. And all kinds of thoughts and images wander in through those doors and windows. And we're sitting in a chair. There's just one chair in the house, and we're sitting in it right in the middle. And these thoughts and images and feelings wander in. We just welcome them. This attitude of welcoming whatever arises. But we stay in our seat. We don't get up and follow those thoughts out the door, down the street. We just welcome them. After a while, the wandering thoughts feel welcomed and realize there's no place for them to sit, so they wander off. And we let them wander off and fade as we stay in our one seat in the middle of our house, still open to welcome whatever shows up, including silence. Again, just welcoming whatever shows up, whatever comes into our house. But staying present. Letting things come and go as we just stay right here. kindness, presence, well-being. These are qualities that are always with us. We don't always notice them because they're quiet. But they aren't qualities that we manufacture. They're just here, sometimes sitting quietly in the background. But if you just open up and come present, you may notice that they've been here all along, faithful companions. So there's nowhere that we have to go. Everything we need is already here. Our attention wanders, yes. So sometimes we have to remember to just come back. To just come back. To just come back. Just this moment. Welcome it. and sending and receiving kindness feel the same. Self dissolves in contentment, and ambition fades into timeless presence.
Battery 100%.
I think we are coming very close to the end of the meditation. This is really wonderful, Doug.
Oh.
In the beginning, I was even a little bit worried. Oh, what if, I didn't put the alarm on or anything like that? What if I go in so deep? Then I remember, no, I have 11 o'clock alarm, so don't worry, just thank you so much. It's wonderful. I don't know how's everyone feeling, and
I really like that there was not too much talk, because sometimes I get in a very deep state and then there's all this tension because I can't get any deeper because people keep on talking.
True.
Yeah.
So it was really nice.
Oh, good. Yeah, I find that too. The helpful suggestions can kind of ease you along, but everything sort of falls out of words at some point.
Yeah.
And actually, even when the mind is drifting subtly, it's not like it's something to be gotten rid of. It's just, it comes up spontaneously, and there's, so it's really the practice is more about being with it wisely.
Yeah.
The attitude you bring to it is not going to change the moment. But if it's welcoming, it tends to influence the next moment and the moment after that.
Yeah. I think time to time I still do that. I don't know about other people, like, I have only like 1 hour. Sit, just do it, and guarantee the restlessness will pull me all over. That's for sure. Yeah.
Well, there's a funny thing. I don't know if any of you have done longer sittings, but at times on retreat when I've sat for 4 or 5 hours, it's like I knew there was no way I could sit for that amount of time if I was pushing.
Yeah.
And so I would just tend to ease back a little bit, and then it was amazing. Of course, you ease back a little bit, the mind drifts a little bit, but over time, it just, can settle itself.
Yeah. I myself has that challenge, like I think it's the longest I can sit is 3 hours 45 minutes, and Bundy was pushing me, get 4 hours, and I couldn't. And what are the tips and trick to it? Like it's the relax. I just keep telling myself, I relax, just 15 more minutes, but it can only do so much. I'm very, I notice myself, I'm very like intense meditator, but not very long time. But I can benefit from a longer sitting.
So part of it is actually watching the mind, when you're doing that. What is the intensity like? I think one of the things that people do that's not so helpful is to pay too much attention to the content of the mind.
Yes.
What it is you're thinking about, because the content is always in the past or is anticipating the future.
Yes.
But if you can shift your attention to just notice what's actually going on, the mind is thinking or it's worrying.
Yes.
my mind likes to explain a lot. So it's explaining, or it's pouting, or, or it's, whatever it's actually doing. And that actually brings you more into the present. And as you notice more of what the, Bhante calls it, the how rather than the what.
Right.
But and as you notice that, then what happens is the qualities, the mind, heart, becomes much more obvious.
Yeah.
And then you can just feel those qualities. And so if the mind is straining, or you're pushing to stay there, you just notice the pushing. Oh, there's pushing. And of course, when you do that, the whatever is observing is not out there doing that. It's observing the pushing, so it can just allow it to go forward. And that's actually the core of dependent origination. It's always looking at the causes and conditions and not trying to change what's going on, but to cultivate the causes and conditions, which will give rise to uplifted qualities.
Yes, that's very nice. Yeah. My mind is like, I label a lot, like it's like, it's happening. I even, when I was meditating with Udesnia, I even see that my mind talks a lot. Don't worry, it does that all the time. That's what they do. So yeah, it's lately I notice it like it's slightly ahead of where I exactly am, like it's always ahead of it, and then keep labeling it, like I guess it's in the anticipations, and I'm trying to balance.
Yeah, well, you can actually watch that. There was a time of my practice where I was actually paying attention to, how far or how close I was to the present, and so if it's if I'm seeing out there, rather than try to pull it back, to just say, oh, it's anticipating, or it's reminiscing, and you just notice that quality of it. And of course, whatever the awareness is that's noticing that is not in the future for that moment.
Right.
It's just that it can come back in.
Thank you. Anyone else? Like I'm the only one asking the questions. Come on.
I have a question.
Yes.
My name's Daniela. So Sil and Kin, and of course, our guest today, you talk about a deep state, and I'm still a rookie. Can you describe, so that I would know if I'm meditating properly? What did Sil mean, or how, can you explain to get into a deep state, and that the conversation or the guidance and words kind of disturbed when you got into a deep state? Can you talk about that, somebody?
Yeah, so right now, at this moment, as you're talking, and thinking about all that stuff, can you feel how behind all that, there's a sort of soft, quiet place?
I haven't been there yet. Well, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
When you notice it, it actually seems obvious. It doesn't seem so esoteric, but
it's very brief.
Yeah. It feels very brief, because part of the difficulty in seeing is it's got very little energy in it, and the mind tends to go to energy. So when there's just a quiet place, there's a tendency for the mind to just kind of skip over it. And if you think about it, it's how evolution has bred us. Survival in the jungle depends on noticing what's going on, not noticing that still space. And so, our biology just naturally goes to the movement. But meanwhile, there's a quiet there that is, it's actually incredibly patient. It's not going anywhere. Doesn't mind whether we notice it or not. If I can anthropomorphize it a little bit. And so what's probably important in the meditation is noticing that still place and then hanging on to it. it creates some tension, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you just notice it and then sort of release a little bit, and then notice it again and release and notice it again, because every time you notice it a little bit, it becomes a little realer, you know, that it's quiet there, and so we miss it. So the last part of those aspirations were my attempt to try to get a little bit at what some people might call a deeper state, but it's not deeper. It's just quieter. When sending and receiving kindness feel the same. So there's this place where, you know, where somebody's sending kindness to us or we're sending it to somebody else, does not actually feel that different. You can think about it differently, but the actual moment-to-moment feel of it is actually quite similar. So in that place, you know, the awareness just kind of, the sense of self that's looking just starts to lighten up. And our ambition, all the doing can still go on, but it just doesn't seem as important anymore.
It doesn't impact you as deeply.
Yeah.
I'm starting to get there. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and it's actually hard to, you know, I think sometimes, so the metaphor of the path is not very helpful, right? Because it implies that we're here and I've got to get somewhere else. Larry Rosenberg's a teacher in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I always loved the way he put it. He said, everybody's trying to get from A to B, and he says, I'm just trying to get from A to A. And so it's just a matter of allowing the awareness to be present. You can't make it be present, but it always is in the present. The future and the past are constructs, they're mental constructs.
Yeah. That's good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Doug, I have a question. You know, not it's happening not every time, but once in a while it happens, like
You're cutting in
in
and
front
out.
of me, water layer still okay.
I'm sorry, it was breaking up. I wasn't quite getting
Now
what you're
it's okay.
saying.
Yeah, because when I'm meditating, not every time, once in a while, some sittings I feel like water layer in front of me, and like it's still not flowing at all, and that was very deep. I'm watching if something is coming up. What that means?
I didn't catch that last part.
It's still, it's not flowing. Water is not flowing, but I can see the other side of it. Something like that I see. What that means? What kind of a thing is that?
So let me see if I understand you. You're breaking up a little bit. So you're sitting and there's a stillness.
Stillness, yeah, stillness, like the water is still, it's not flowing. Something like that I see. What is that? It's a deep state of?
So you're asking if that's what the deep state means?
Yeah, something like that, stillness.
Yeah. It's actually remarkably simple. And it's so natural to our being. It's just that our perceptual apparatus was, you know, evolved to notice changes and stuff. So when the mind is very still, it's like the mind wants to grab, you know, it's kind of looking for things. And when there's just the stillness, there's not much to grab onto. And so it can feel like nothing. And I think people probably experience taste, maybe even deep taste of that more than they realize. because what happens is the mind gets quieter, and what you're seeing gets quieter, and so it kind of feels the same.
Mm-hmm.
But then perhaps when you get up from sitting, you realize, oh, wait a minute, things were really cooled out there for a while.
Yeah.
Things are really quiet. And so it is profound, but it's also quite simple.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure if I'm getting at what you were asking.
It's a stillness, but nothing comes up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm watching, nothing comes up to contemplate, or nothing will be there. For a moment, few moments, it will be like that. Then it disappears.
Yeah. So there's this. If I'm hearing you right, there's this place is probably most noticeable, actually around the seventh jhana, which is called nothingness, but I think it's actually a mistranslation. I think it's no thingness.
Mm-hmm.
That there's actually a flow of experience that's going on there, but it doesn't break up into separate clumps. There are no things there.
No things, yeah.
Yeah, and so the experience of that is, it's hard to put words on it because language is itself is about objects. But when there's just a flow and no objects, it's like, how do you describe that? And it feels...
But it has a nice feeling.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so what's probably
it's a nice
most...
feeling, but
It's a nice feeling, but what?
Nice feeling, nothing for me to contemplate, or for David told me to watch suddenly what's coming. Nothing comes up, but it doesn't stay for long. It quickly goes, few seconds.
Yeah, so what I would say is that when there's that calmness, what you can do is actually relax into it.
Mm-hmm.
Just relax into it. If you look at the text, I was going to throw that in on the guided, but I decided that was too much. There are no 6 R's in the text, and so the 6 R's are a slight elaboration. But what's there in the text, the Four Noble Truths, if you look at those as meditation instructions, each one of those has a verb with it. So the first noble truth is suffering. And it says suffering is to be understood. And the understanding there is not an intellectual analysis. It's just seeing things as they are. And it's... what's really important about it is, again, our biology is trained to turn away from suffering. As you're hurting, there's a time to get out of there. But the system overdoes it.
Mm-hmm.
So suffering is to be understood. So my translation of that into practice is simply turning towards. So something comes up in meditation, and you simply turn the awareness towards it. And if you turn the awareness towards it, we begin to notice that all suffering has some tension, some tightness right at the core of it. In the text, it's called tanha, which refers to tension of any kind, mental, physical, emotional. And the verb that goes with it is really quite dramatic. I'm not a Pali scholar, so when I'm looking at these texts, I like to get 5 or 6 translations, from different people I trust. And all of them translate this verb the same way. They say the tanha, this tension, is to be abandoned. It's very dramatic. You don't mess around with it, you just walk away from it. So I translate that as relaxing into. How do you abandon tension? You relax. So you turn towards, you relax into, and then what you're referring to is more what the third noble truth is about, which is that nirodha is to be abandoned. Now, nirodha is just a deep Nirodha is to be realized. Nirodha is, it's actually that state you were talking about when there's just really nothing going on. Yeah. It's a deep quiet. And in the Buddha's instructions around that are really interesting. They say it's to be realized. And, you know, he didn't speak English, so realize is the English translations of it. It really means make real. And so how do you make that deep quiet real? You let it soak into your bones. So when you experience that quiet, you just open up and just let it seep in. Because our mind so easily goes off other places. So when you experience it, you just let it soak in. Turning towards, relaxing into, and I call it savory. It's just allowing it to come in. And neuroscientists, you know, tell us that the brain is about 4 times more sensitive to pain than pleasantness. Mm-hmm. And again, it's a survival thing. And, you know, if you notice a piece of fruit in a saber-toothed tiger, you know, if you pay attention to fruit, you get eaten. If you pay attention to the tiger, you know, you live to come back and get the fruit later. The Buddha was saying that when that well-being, when you get those moments of quiet, when there doesn't seem like there's anything going on, you just let it soak in. And that will, those are the causes and conditions that allow the mind to keep getting quieter.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you so much.
So actually, you know, when the mind drifts, you can do the 6 R's. You can do, as they all roll together, you can just, you know, we used to call it swishing, you know, which is just all 6 R's at once. You can also do, I call these the 3 essential practices: turning towards, relaxing into, and savoring. It's kind of halfway in between those. Which doesn't have all those 6 steps, so it's a little bit simpler, but it actually has the essence of it in there. And I like it because it comes straight out of the text too. So it's probably closer, you know, to how the Buddha actually talked about it.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
My question is about the relaxed test. How can I make out that I have relaxed or not in that test?
I didn't quite. How do you know if you relax?
The relaxed test in the 6 R's. How to know whether I've really relaxed or not, or I just sort of just went over it?
Yeah. So one thing that you can notice is if you're worried about relaxing enough, if there's a little bit of worry, then you worry the relaxing. So, I mean, I'm being a little silly about it, but it's really true. Part of the beauty of this practice is that you don't have to perfect it. It is actually self-correcting. You know, so in the beginning, the mind would be really jumpy, you know, etc. And you quiet down a little bit and you think, wow, that's really still. And a little later, you realize, no, that's actually, the mind can be a whole lot quieter than that. But as the mind gets quiet, it will notice, you know, of itself. So what's important in that is you phrase your question as kind of a judgment. It's like, how do I know whether I'm doing it right or not? And so in terms of what's most helpful in the practice, if the mind is in a judging place, you just notice, oh, there's judging, there's evaluating, or maybe there's you know, some insecurity or something. You're not sure whether you're doing it right. It's actually noticing what's going on in the moment, then turning towards that, relaxing into it, and then savoring any peacefulness that comes up will help the deep stillness that's already here, will just help that come to the surface more and more and more. It's hard to describe this because the language is necessarily dualistic. You know, it's the nature of language, but the deeper experience of it is actually the non-dual.
Okay.
And if when the mind is busy, as I was talking before, if you can just even notice, even for a moment, the stillness that is behind all that, then you can feel something relaxes a little bit and just allows a little bit more. And it's paradoxical because as you relax more, there can be deeper tension that you hadn't seen before that comes to the surface. So it can seem like things are tightening and loosening and tightening and loosening. But if you just keep relaxing into what's ever there, it just, you know, gradually quiets itself. Until there is a deep pot of tension, you know, knot of tension that needs to be noticed, and then that will pop into awareness, and it seems like you've lost it. Like your mind is suddenly running around. But no, it's just the tension that was already underneath there is more obvious. And so what's important is not what's there, but how you relate to it. You know, can you welcome it? Ah, glad I could finally see this. Turn towards, relax into, savor.
Wow. Thank you.
You're welcome. You know, the other thing that that can be confusing about the practice is that particularly in the beginning, you know, you can come up with a pretty good set of instructions that seems to apply to a whole lot of people. I mean, Bhante's done that really, really well. But as the mind gets quieter and quieter and quieter, the types of disturbances that are left there are less and less general and more specific, you know, to your being and to your experience, et cetera, et cetera. And so as it gets quieter and quieter, the types of disturbances that come up will be different for each of us. And so, you know, if we're looking for some outside guidance as to what we can do, it may be hard to find because yours is a little bit different than everybody else's. And so what I think can be really important is get some strategy of how to work with that. And the strategy I like, I call it empirical trials. You know, if something comes up and you're not quite sure what to do with it, well, just try whatever your instincts say. And the important thing about empirical trials is to notice what the data is, to notice what happens. And so I think, like for example, one of the common things that people deal with in different ways is how much energy, you know, to bring to the practice. You bring too much and the effort gets strong and the mind tightens up, you know, and that doesn't work. You bring too little and the mind can get kind of drifty and sort of float off and go all over the place. And so what I think is helpful is to just make sure that you're falling off the path equal number of times on both sides of it, you know, so you bring a little more energy into it and you see what happens, and then so you relax back, and then at some point it gets to be too much and the mind sort of drifts off, so you bring a little in, and so it's that just constant, not constant, but being willing to just try out different things and see what works on your system. I chronically over effort. You know, it's my childhood, all the stuff I was trying to do. And there have been times in my practice, it just was not going anywhere. And so I relaxed it more and more until it felt like I was being lazy. So I'll do lazy practice. And sometimes when I did that, It's just everything came into balance and just quieted down. So what a balanced place looked like laziness to me, but I would not have found that if I had not sort of risked drifting around a little bit more. And so I can really get into, that. And then at some point, the laziness, rather coming back into balance, just sort of drifts off into mush. So say, okay, well, I've gone too far. It needs a little more energy in it. And so you do that fine tuning. And these days, I keep quoting this musician, David Darling, who's a music educator. And one thing he said about music is he said, nothing is difficult. Some things take time. And so in this practice, we try things and just have some patience with it and let the practice reveal itself to us rather than us going after it all the time.
Yeah.
I like that.
And the mind, it's dangerous in personifying it too much, but it really wants to do what we ask of it. I mean, it really tries hard. And so you have to know yourself to know whether you tend to try too hard, in which case you need to relax enough, or whether you actually need to bring some more energy, attention, interest, to your practice, and then just see how it balances out.
I really like the way you say laziness. I just found it, I'm like you, like I'm always over efforting. And sometimes it's like so much that, it's very tense in the head, right? So I recently, I found it accidentally, like just let go of all my energy. And to the point that, am I sleeping? Then I realized, no, my mind is super quiet and I know everything, whatever it comes up. And easily now I can practice, letting go and, more relax into it. But if I think I'm to the, at this moment, I'm to the maximum of relaxing. If I'm relaxed more than that, I'm about to doze off. But I guess, I kind of like found a sweet spot. So I'm going to be using that for a little bit more. But yeah, like it's just a try and error kind of thing, just constantly, right? So, yeah, it's so much you can, as a teacher or guide, or like, listening to other people telling you what to do. But the adjustment of it is, I always talk to, some people who ask me, is just like a driving, you know that there's a red light coming up, then you have to stop. But when do you slow down? It's only you know it. Right?
Yeah, and sometimes we don't even know it until we find it.
Sometimes, yes.
So I think, for those of us who like to over effort, is that when the mind comes into balance, it will resonate with what for us was kind of the verge of falling asleep. So it feels like we're drifting off.
Yeah.
And the thing that's helpful to look at that point, when the mind feels sort of drifty like that, is that if you're actually falling asleep, the mind will be groggy and a little bit foggy. But you can come in a place where it feels like it's fallen asleep. But if you look, no, the mind is just clear.
Yeah.
Just brilliant. And then you know that actually is not sleepiness. Sleepiness actually has a lot of tension in it. It's a sort of a dull tension, so we don't notice it so much. But you can see that clarity there. And there are a lot of Bhante's students, in recent years have started to use, they call it clear mind as an object. Really, it's not an object, because if there's a thing there, but there is a kind of a clear, open, simple ness that you can see there. But again, it's so quiet, the mind tends to skip over it.
Yes.
And look for the next thing, the next problem. I got so much mileage in my early years about sort of recognizing difficulties in me and solving them, that when my meditation started going deeper, it was like I was unconsciously trying to create problems to solve, because that's how I did so much stuff before. So I had to get over that.
Anyone questions or comments?
Hi, Doug.
Hi, Helen.
Helen here. Yes. Yeah, I would like to share my experience with your analogy last talk on the room sitting with all the door open.
Mm-hmm.
And just now, when you're leading the guide, that you have lead us to allow the openness of like sitting in the room. And then the sitting in there in the seat that we are staying in, which is with the object, right? So it's actually, I just right feel the benefit of like how to stay on the object, which is I think is what we need. Like you allow that openness, yet we don't want to be distracted, but we are still sitting in the A to A point there. Is that what we should be? And I find it was so much better in a way that I just felt it during this lead that I had to just for a sharing of like how to get ourselves into the object. That was what I find first very resonating, and it's very helpful. I mean, for retaining ourselves, but yet the distractions are, because we tend to pull, I tend to pull like the distractions to going through the 6 hour directions, but yet leaving it out there in the space, and that we come back and relax in the A, and I just learned, is so good. It's actually was making me a much better, like the sharing just I had the experience just now. It's very profound. So I have to thank you that that analogy that you talk about, like Ajahn Chah for the doors. Last talks 3 weeks, I didn't get the hold of it until today when you tell us to sit in the center of that room. I just had that like sharing here, which is so good, and I thank you very much.
Oh. That's the music someplace. There we go. Yeah, I love that that metaphor too, and part of what it brings in for me that I understood, but I realized I hadn't really gotten completely, is stuff you hear from Rumi and others about having this really welcoming attitude. So for example, you say the distraction shouldn't be there. Well, there's some aversion towards the distractions, but you actually, you're not intentionally, creating those. They just show up on their own. And so the welcoming attitude that Ajahn Chah talks about there, seems that there's something about that metaphor that for me, that just helped that really sink in much more, is that if you see distractions as a problem, they will be a problem. But if you see distractions as just, some of it's just a byproduct of having a neural network, get a little static goes through the mind, and we experience that as, thoughts and images and things like that. And if we think that that's wrong or bad, then everything tightens up and it just makes it worse. But if we can welcome those, then they're not a problem.
I also have a second, like more like a question about when you talk about this soaking in, like, and when you get to the very quiet state of the mind, that at that stage of the mind about like you want to relax, but you want to soak in, and then when Kim was talking about like the unconscious or the falling into the sleep, like yet is aware. I can you elaborate a little bit more, because I didn't catch the absorption part. No, not the absorption. I mean the soak in, and yet you extend a little bit more with the term. I didn't catch right the word that you were using.
Nirodha?
I want to. Yeah, no, not Nirodha. I know that state of Nirodha, but then the way that how we get into relax into that quietness of like that still mind, because you already like in that stillness, and yet you are halfly able to see, but there is a soaked in, which I can understand the soaked in. Yet there is another word that the verb that you use is
Savor?
Savor. Yeah, savor. Like is it savor, right?
Yes, savor.
It's safe.
Savor, as in when you get some good food that's really good, if you just kind of stay
savor.
with,
Yeah, okay.
Savor.
Okay.
Yeah, so the I like the term savor. It does have some limitations to it, though, because if what's arising in the mind feels unpleasant, there's a way that you can kind of savor that too. It's like kind of let it come in without resistance. But the term savor is maybe a little confusing in that context. But what both of them have in whatever it is, what it all has in common is that you are not trying to do anything, that you are just receiving. And whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, you are just open and receiving it and not trying to do anything with it. So
it's the taste. It's the taste, and then yet you sorry. Yeah. Please go ahead. Sorry, I shouldn't interrupt. Please.
No, it's okay. You can interrupt me all you want. It's helpful. So when there is, let's say, an unpleasant experience, there is the experience itself, and then there very easily can be a response to the experience, which is aversion. And there are actually two different mind moments, and they can get all mixed up together. When there's something that we like, there's the pleasantness, and then there is the liking, or if it gets extreme, it's greed. It's the wanting being drawn in. And so what the Buddha was really emphasizing was the awareness itself. And when there's that subtle leaning in or leaning away, it starts to color it, and we move off the present. And so for me, the term savoring has a strong connotation of just being with things as they are, without pushing or pulling. It's realizing when there's a flavor that's really nice, you kind of know that if I try to go for it, it'll actually diminish from the experience,
yeah.
as opposed to just receiving it. Where it gets confusing is we can do the same thing with a negative, and you probably wouldn't automatically use savor there. But so if there are distractions in the mind, for example, and we get this idea that that's not good, and along with that can become the aversion to the distraction, when the art of it is actually just to be with the distraction without pushing it away or pulling it in. And when you do that, then the distraction, it just runs through its energy and disappears. And so the image from Ajahn Chah, I think, captures all of that, but it's a much more evocative of you just welcome whatever is there. And then when you're not treating it as anything special, at some point, it runs out of energy and it just dissolves on its own. And what's beautiful about that is you haven't done anything to get rid of it. Mm. You were just present, open in a welcoming way, and it ran out of energy and it dissolved on its own. So it's much more stable. If you get rid of a distraction, then there's a sense you got to keep this kind of aversive energy there to keep it at bay. But if you just allow it to be what it is and actually relax into any liking or aversion, so it's just open, then when it dissolves, there's actually no trace left behind. And you're left into that place that we've been talking about there of there's just presence. There's just presence. And then we think, oh, I really like this. And so it grabs a little bit. And then you can think, oh, shoot, I need to get rid of that. And then you push it away. Or you can just say, oh, there's pushing. Ah, you welcome the pushing. Oh, there's grabbing. You welcome the grabbing. And relax, and just relax into it. You know, when I was...
yeah, I think I get a little and a lot better like what you have in that word, like savoring right now. Like, thank you for, the extended elaboration. It's helpful. It's certainly, it it answered my question there.
Good, good.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, everyone, actually, for bringing this up. The chance that I have, the chance to learn. Thank you. Thank you.
When I was practicing in Thailand, the teacher I had was encouraging me to bring more and more effort, to the practice. And I said to him, I said, I think I probably bring too much effort. He said, no, there's no such thing as too much effort. And so I said, okay, so I go off and I practice that way. And I come back when I report to him next, I was describing what I was doing. And his eyes got bigger and bigger and bigger. And he said, go out and get some ice cream. Relax. And I got it, that he was talking to me as if I was Thai. And my experience of the Thai people are this kind, gentle, sweet, just lovely, lovely people. And I just could not imagine those people trying too hard. But me, my German background and everything else, I can try really hard. And so we sort of have to adjust the instructions to that. And for me, the savoring and that allowing and the welcoming all kind of get at where that balance can be.
It's very it's very like deep in meaning, and yet it's very easy in the way that to experience for me right now. It's just like it's a very tasty, but yet it's something that you should be also relaxing to that beautiful taste of that moment. Do I get it right? Of like, you don't actually need to respond, but yet it's just allowed it like that there.
My phrase for that captures it for me is actually easing awake. That was actually the title of what became Buddha's Map. And my publisher said, no, it's people just won't get it. And I can use that internal book. So that's when I came up with Buddha's Map. But my little Sangha, 501c3, a nonprofit, we call it Easing Awake.
Okay.
And as soon as I came up with that, the next time I went back to Dhammasukha, David or somebody had come up with TWIM. Because I was actually pushing him when I had gone to Bhante, and I told him, you know, the stuff he was teaching is really not down in writing any place, and it would be really lovely if you could write a book on that. And he told me, well, he was actually putting his energy into translating the text into terms that are useful for meditators, and so you know, he didn't have the time or energy to do that.
Yeah.
So sitting in the airport in St. Louis as I was leaving, I said, well, I know how to write, I'll do that. So I put that together, and the first problem I came up with was there wasn't actually a good name for it. And so that's what I came up with. Yeah, I came up with Ease and Awake, and as soon as I did that, then people started coming up with other ones, but I still like Ease and Awake. For me, the problem with TWIM is it's an acronym. And so for people who don't know how it translates, it feels like you get an in group and an out group. So I know very much what he's talking about. For somebody that hasn't heard it, has that problem. It takes a while to get what they're talking about.
What did you say? Ease and awake.
Easy and awake.
Ease and awake.
Yes, and it was kind of a reaction to my own internal stuff of feeling like, you know, enlightenment, awakening is something that takes a lot of push.
Yeah.
And no, it's actually something we relax into.
Yeah. Right.
Doc, I have a question.
Yes, please.
So regarding the object, regarding the Brahma Vihara, so sometimes I wonder, so because I'm not practicing regularly, so I think that each time I meditate, I usually come back to metta. Is it to the directions, or how should I change to something else if my practice is not very regular like that?
So here's the deal. Here's the deal with all this. If you have a wholesome and an unwholesome quality in the mind at the same time, which one wins?
Wholesome.
Pardon?
Wholesome.
Yes, the wholesome wins. This is really, really good news. A lot of people think that the unwholesome is going to win. So all you have to do is bring up some wholesome qualities, and they tend to attract other wholesome qualities. So I think of the Brahma Viharas, you know, the reason that they start with metta is because it is a very wholesome quality, and it's relatively thick, you know, compared to something like equanimity. There's not much to get a hold of there. Mm-hmm. But metta is something that we experience and recognize more easily. And so the reason the Brahma Vihara practice starts with metta is because it's a relatively easy, wholesome quality to use, and it draws in all the others. And then what happens is, as the practice deepens, is at some point the metta feels a little bit, I mean, it's lovely, but it feels a little thick, and you can feel the equanimity and the spaciousness and other qualities. So, you know, so it may naturally move to those. But in terms of where you practice, as long as you deal with wholesome qualities, I think you use what you got. You know, and if you sit down and there's a lot of kindness or maybe generosity or other wholesome, whatever one's there, you send it to yourself, you send it out to the world wherever your practice is, and that will draw the other qualities. So you don't have to really worry about which Brahma Vihara to tap into, because they will all draw all the others. So why not just use the one that comes the easiest for you? And for most people, metta is very easy in the beginning, but it will naturally open up all the way down in, you know, into clear mind.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. So, but when you mentioned about clear mind, is it the same with quiet mind?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, to me, the language has, slightly different flavors to it, but they're all Brahma Viharas. And I would say, different words have different connotations for different people. And so as long as you're in the ballpark there, use whatever language comes most naturally for you. You don't have to push something into somebody else's language, as long as it's really clear inside you what it is. Find the easiest way. And that usually works best.
Thank you. Thank you, Doc. Thank you very much.
So what else is lingering there?
I know. Any more
Sometimes there are little questions that linger on the side and you think, that's not important. And then we leave the session and afterward, you think, I wish I'd
had that. I have another question.
We caught her, yes.
Because once all the hindrance has gone, once in a while, thoughts are coming. Mm-hmm. When thoughts come, do we have to go to again relax steps or just watch the thought and just move with the objective meditation? What we have to do? We have to do the relaxing for the thoughts as well?
Yes. So at first going through all those steps is helpful. And then as the practice goes deeper, they just all start to blend together. And so what I recommend to people, if they all start feeling clunky, like it's feels regimented, recognize, release, relax, as opposed to a flow, just let them all flow together. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. And then the one thing that you can do is that every once in a while, you slow them down and go through all of them. And I will notice, for example, I slow it down as recognize, release, relax, and then the smile or something sort of got left out when they all flowed together. And so then I would emphasize that for a few moments and then go back to letting them all flow together.
Yeah.
So
that should be done for the heavy thoughts. Sometimes there are light thoughts, those are not heavy. Some thoughts are coming with the emotions very heavy. In that case, we have to do the 6 hours.
Yeah, that's right. My latest book is called Resting in the Waves, and what that's really about is how all aspects of this practice are fluid. Things come and go, and they're in different times. And so there are times when the wisest practice is to go through each of those, and there are other times when it's not so much. And so you just let them go, and then every once in a while, if you're letting them all flow together, you bring the 6 hours in for a tune-up, which is slow them down and see which one's missing.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. Thank you so much.
You spoke about some 3 steps that you advise sometimes instead of doing the whole 6 hours. What was that?
Oh, the more abbreviated process?
Yes, yes.
So my words for it are turning towards, relaxing into, and savoring. And and they are the first 3 of the 4 Noble Truths. Okay. The 4 Noble Truths are not metaphysical principles, they're actually meditation instructions.
Yeah. And
so that was just my bringing those 3 practices into modern English. But you'll see the turning towards in the 6 R's is actually the recognizing and releasing. It's recognizing what's there and rather grab hold of it, release it. So you're just turning towards, not going after. Relaxing into The difficulty with the relax step is that in English, relax sometimes has a slightly aversive quality to it. Relax, man, distance yourself from it. That's not what Bhante intended. It's not what the Buddha intended. But relaxing into, so if there's a lot of anger coming up, if you relax into the anger, it's a very different movement than relaxing to get away from it. You just relax and open up. So turning towards relaxing into, and then the savoring is the smiling and the returning. And I like it closer to the text.
So turning towards, relaxing into, and savoring.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes. I call them the 3 essential practices.
Absolutely. Okay.
So are we coming to a completion for the moment?
Coming.
And so again, you can sort of think about if there's something that may pop up in a half an hour.
Yeah.
This is the time, but if we're finishing up, then we can finish up.
All right.
Let's leave a little space to see if there's something else.
So just give a couple more minutes. Not then we will share merit. Not a couple more minutes, a few more seconds, I guess. So, all right. So shall we share merit? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
So please join me sharing the merit.
Most of us should probably turn our
microphone. May suffering ones be suffering free, and fears struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we have thus acquired for the acquisitions of all kinds of happiness. May being inhabiting space and earth, Devas and Nagas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu. Thank you so much again, Doug. It's lovely. You are on mute.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you so much.
For having me.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank
you,
Thank
Ken.
you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ken.
Beautiful.
You're welcome.
Excellent learning today.
Yes. It's always very much pleasure, Doug. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Kim, for the arrangement.
Good day, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a beautiful day, everyone.
Okay.